we had this guy crazy enough to kill a moose with a stick bow out of a saddle. And was it Colorado? Sean Hines, one of our ambassadors. So we have that story actually on our Mobile Venatic page
YouTube,
if you want to read the blog.
Well, he first sent it to us the night before he killed that moose. It walked directly under him, and he was only 13 or 14 feet in the air, and moose are so big that he's like, I could have just poked it in the head with my bow, which is incredible.
You're now listening to the Mobile Venatic podcast.
That's a giant.
All right, so this is episode 3 of the Mobile Venatic podcast. We have Bobby and the baby. No, we have Bobby, we have myself, Weston, and we also, for the first time, have Nick Betts on. Nick, what do you do for Trophyline? Just to give people a little bit of background.
I am our senior director of operations, so I'll be honest, what that really means is I do a whole bunch of different tasks. So I help things in the warehouse, logistics, order processing, new product development, and I work with, obviously with marketing and you guys on getting things developed and launched as we go from there. So a whole host of different things. We all wear a lot of hats here, but it's a whole lot of fun either way.
Yeah, no, we are a small team, so we all have our hands in just about everything. So I think it's definitely a good summary.
There's no room for boredom, that's for sure.
No. No, your mind is always cranking. That's how it is. Especially right now, when we're filming this, we are in the midst of the Hyperlight launch. We are in the midst of peak sale season, right before deer season, peak prep season, everything. And what we wanted to do for this episode is obviously, Trophyline, we're a mobile hunting gear company. We like to be that one-stop shop where you can pick up everything that you need to start saddle hunting. Even the guy that has been saddle hunting with some gear, upgrading his gear. Well, I mean, we're at every point in this, but where we really like to cater to, especially lately with some of the things that we've been doing, is that new saddle hunter. We go to shows, we show people, we show them how to get set up, how to work their equipment, how to get their system ready to go. We have really good online videos, resources, lots of different ambassadors doing the same. And we have even the new system builder, which really helps people dial their stuff in. We have a lot of different resources, and that's all to cater to guys that are coming in or really fresh. And this series, these next 3 episodes, that is what this is going to be. We are breaking down Saddle Hunting 101. This episode, number 1, will be what is it? Why we're doing it, what are the benefits, cons, if there are any, right? No.
Sure, there's cons.
Yeah, there's cons. And, what do you need to start and how to start? What from guys that have been doing it for a while, you guys longer than me, but also, how do you recommend to start? I come from a failed point of start, definitely, so I can kind of share some insight into what not to do. But I think that's going to be the breakdown. Number 2, so episode 4 in this podcast will be kind of covering what does it cost, is it worth it, how to jump into it, like really breaking down kind of cost and getting into it on actual buying product or buying what you need to get it done. Building your system, tips from us on building the systems. And how we like to, little details make big improvements when running your system. And then number 3, tips, kind of aftermarket upgrades, like years into it. I mean, I'm still adjusting my stuff. I'm sure you guys are the same way.
If you love to tinker, it's great.
Yeah.
It's such a tinkering favored type kind of a, I don't know, way to hunt, which being like an archery nerd, like I love tinkering with that stuff too, so it fits right in.
Oh yeah, and I'm exactly opposite. I'm not a gear nut, so it's like, but I still find myself tinkering and bringing suggestions. Sharing deer camp last year with Nodak and seeing these guys do some, gear adjustments that are,
that we hadn't seen, never thought of. Yeah,
and us showing them. It's kind of it's all sharing that. that knowledge. So that's going to be number three. We're going to bring in a couple guests that do have some cool aftermarket upgrades. Maybe bring in a couple ambassadors that have some off the wall upgrade tips, setting up some tips that maybe don't make it into those YouTube videos that you're watching, all the different tips and things that you're trying to watch, that you're trying to pick up on. These next three videos, including this one, you know, this should be everything you need to know about saddle hunting and getting you off the ground with multiple years of experience. So, with that, Nick, I will let you kind of take it away. You've been the longest employee with Trophyline here. Uh, I don't know between yourself or Robert if you've been saddle hunting longer, but what is saddle hunting?
So saddle hunting for me is just a different method to attack whitetail deer. But saddle hunting historically, saddles were invented in early 1960s, so they've been around for a very long time. One of the original mobile hunting styles.
It's
very
not hunting from a saddle of a horse.
no
Yeah.
tree saddles.
Let's define
Tree
that.
saddles. So hunting from a saddle of a horse, of course, has been around
A lot
for
longer.
very long time. But hunting from a tree saddle, since the early 60s has been a thing. Um, Very difficult for people to understand the concept, though, when you're outside of a trade show or something like that. So if it's sitting at any sort of store, uh, past then, it was difficult for people to really grasp it, myself included. So my dad did some saddle hunting with some earlier models back when I was a kid, and I didn't really grab the concept. I thought, oh, this doesn't work. I'm gonna, me being a kid, like, I know better than my dad. I'm gonna do this climber. I'm gonna do this mobile lock on, whatever it is. So I started down those paths, and it just didn't pan out for me. But what saddle hunting is just an alternative method to climb a tree and use a tree more than you can other limited methods, such as a different fixed position tree stand or a climbing tree stand. That saddle allows you to use the tree 360 degrees, multiple different styles of trees. The angle of the tree doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't have to be limbless. So really, it's just an alternative method for you to climb safely, and you're now facing the tree. So everything's right in front of you. That was one of the main benefits for me that I liked, is all my gear was in front of me. So again, what it is, just an alternative method. There's tons of methods. Everything's a personal preference. So it's another tool in your tool belt when you're going to attack these whitetail deer, blacktail, moose, what have you, whatever you want to do with it. It's just another method to get up in a tree and get
Mhm.
after.
And he says moose because we had this guy crazy enough to kill a moose with a stick bow out of a saddle, and was it Colorado? Sean
Yeah.
Hines,
Yeah.
one of our ambassadors. So we have that story actually on our Mobile Venatic page
YouTube.
if you want to read the blog.
I don't know
Yeah.
if it made the story completely because it was hard to see in video, but when he first sent it to us the night before he killed that moose, it walked directly under him, and he was only, 13 or 14 feet in the air, and moose are so big that he's like, I could have just poked it in the head with my bow, which is incredible. So, that's why I led to say moose. Obviously, there's been some elk taken out of saddles now. I know people are trying for other species. So we'll see. I know we've got some of our guys are going after some pretty interesting critters here soon.
It might be
with their
crazy what you
saddles.
guys see next.
So
Yeah.
I'm excited for it. Lots of really cool things. Again, it's just a different method to safely hunt from an elevated position, but it just gives you more ability to use a wider variety of trees and positions.
You said something right there that I think is key. I mean, people can argue about it and say that you could be just as safe from a tree stand because you can tether from the ground, or excuse me, you can use your lineman's rope from the ground, climb up with your sticks and get up to the tree, put your harness on and all that stuff. But in general, if you're following all of the steps properly in saddle hunting, there's no way for you to fall out of a tree unless the tree breaks off or you decide to get out a really sharp knife and cut a whole bunch of stuff on your things.
And I think that's like a sub draw. So what I wanted to highlight next was like, okay, the definition of saddle hunting. You did a good job, right? The way I like to explain it at a trade show is like it's no different than a hang on, except for your platform is a very, very small hang on, and it is vastly different once you are at the top of the tree. You're standing on the platform instead of a tree stand. Everything changes at that point, right?
And there's no
So
shock value if something were to slip. That's like the biggest difference between
yeah, the
the
safety side
safety
of
of a
it.
tree stand and a saddle. Yeah,
So Nick, why don't you explain that a little bit more on
Sure.
the safety side?
So the safety side of it, like Robert, like you were saying, obviously there's safe ways to use all other elevated hunting devices. We have these procedures and we have these standards that we all work through as a group, as an industry, to make sure everyone's safe in the tree. But with a saddle, the main thing about it is that you literally cannot use it without having that safety device on it. So in theory, you could set up a fixed position tree stand or a climbing tree stand or a platform or whatever. And you could hunt that without a harness on because you could physically stand on it and use it as it's designed without the harness. Nobody advises you do that. If you do it, please stop. We
yeah,
want you to come out of the woods safely. But in theory, you could do it. One of the best features about the saddles is if you forget your saddle, if you don't have it on, or if you don't have it with you, you cannot leave the ground and hunt out of your saddle system. There's just, you can't do it. You're not going to be able to. So that's a main built-in safety feature. But as far as when you're actually in the tree, you're using your lineman's rope all the way up, and once you're tethered in, because the saddle hugs you around your backside rather than holding you on a dorsal connection and pulling you straight up and down, if something were to happen, if you were to slip, and you're going to have constant tension. So the only thing that's going to happen in the first place is you swing into the tree, right? But if for some reason you came into a shock load situation somehow in your setup, it's going to catch you. And when it does, that saddle is behind your buttocks and it doesn't cut off any arteries in your inner thighs. So you don't get suspension trauma. You could sit there all day and you might not be in the most comfortable position if something happened to you, but you're not going to pass out. And it's also easier to kind of push off with your feet because you're facing the tree. If you need to get some suspension relief for whatever reason, maybe it is in a weird spot where it's pinching you and it's kind of making your leg a little, go a little numb, whatever it is. You can push off on that a lot easier and get to your gear and figure out how to self-recover versus being turned around, spinning, and just being completely disoriented on a standard harness system. So really for me, it's just everything's right in front of you. There's none of that pull, none of that shock trauma or anything like that. You're just swinging into the tree, and then you could just sit there all day long until you can get called for help. Always bring something to call people. Let somebody know where you're hunting to. That's the bigger safety feature than anything we could give you, is being able to contact somebody if you need help. But in general, I consider it safer because of the features I explained. You can't use it elevated without actually having the device on. And when you have the device on, it doesn't create more dangerous situations if a slip occurs.
And the worst thing we've probably seen or heard from an ambassador, recently was with the a mechanical ascender, pulling what I call the fun cord when he had weight on it, and on the tether, there is a knot at the end of the rope, and that catches it. So even in that worst case scenario of introducing slack to your system and sliding down to the bottom of the rope, the self rescue was
Dude,
way easier.
for clarification for the people listening to this, the dude slid to the bottom of his knot, went to underneath of his platform, asked his camera guy if he was still on the deer, and still shot the deer from below his platform.
So he was fine.
It was amazing. It was the best
is,
footage I've ever seen.
Yeah,
that is some determination. But yeah, it's there's also a host of different things that you could use and potentially put yourself in a dangerous situation. Specifically for mechanical centers, I almost always recommend that you have another backup in place, whether it's a Prusik above that or not. Just to catch it if something were to happen. Obviously, every single rope we sell and many other brands in the industry are going to sell them with a stopper knot that is liable and able to catch you if something were to happen. So the good thing is too is with the saddles, because the pouches and the rows of MOLLE you're going to have all around your hip, you can customize where you have your safety equipment, and in most cases, your lineman's rope is going to be attached to you at all times. So if something happens, you need to self-rescue, you have another safety rope on you at all times. And then you can have more than one of those safety ropes if you needed to. You could have all manner of different devices on you, first aid kits, extra knives, whatever it is. You can have it all around at your waist to access. Traditional harnesses, they do have the capability of that. It's just not as refined. And sometimes people have those harnesses underneath the rest of their system, so they can't get to that equipment. So if
Yeah, I
something
like that
happens,
point. They don't
it's
think
hard
about
to
it
do.
as a yeah, they don't think about it as a system. So they don't like it's
Mhm.
not a tool belt like a saddle is, those regular harnesses. And I don't think they
Yes.
think about it as that. But that might change as, this whole thing is evolving. I mean, all mobile hunting
Sure.
stuff is evolving. So I think that we are seeing an evolution of gear and hybrids and different things like that, which is going to be interesting in the coming years. I actually wanted to jump back. I know we were talking about safety as one of the main
Sure.
benefits of saddle hunting, but you said saddle hunting had started in the 1960s, and I know in other podcasts like Working Class Bow Hunters, we specifically said this before. But Trophyline was the actual first, starting with the Green family, was actually the very first saddle. I mean, that was where it was born. Um, but I would like to clear, but now why is it hot, right? Why all of a sudden is it hot now? And I think that kind of goes back to back then, they didn't have the internet, they didn't have podcasts, they didn't have YouTube videos. This thing, saddle hunting in general, was hard to sell, right? I mean, they were stuck on shelves, different things like that. It was just harder to sell. The information wasn't there. And also I think it's evolved with the trend of right what we see public land, but we weren't facing the hunters back then. I don't think we're facing as many obstacles to potential land, right? And hunting as far as
Mhm.
leases and private and arguably maybe even more public to hunt now as well. So I think that given the situation of the environment and the media and the technology that's present to us, arguably the technology that's present now in gear, right? I mean, massive strides for even trophy line this year. Um, I think that it's important to point out that while it may be in the past couple of years have been noted as a trend or a fad, it is here to stay and it's evolving because this information is present. It's so easily digestible now, and it's become so common, in my opinion, that
Mhm.
it's very easy to understand. Um, Obviously, we're still trying to offer this resource because there are still major gains you can do by listening, getting more knowledge on systems and tips and things like that. But in a general sense, I think that more information and the technology gains, even in the gear itself, kind of point to these other massive draws of saddle hunting beyond that fad, beyond that trend, which, you know, right after safety, I would argue, because what we just said, right? This is no different than a hang on, except for you have better benefits from a safety standpoint. But let's just talk about the draws of saddle hunting being the lightweight and the stealth factor, right? Because those are really big.
Yeah, I think. Well, it's not even just lightweight and stealth factor in the woods. It is. Let's be honest. Not everybody's got a nice big home to store multiple
Yep.
tree stands in it all year long. It's some people. A lot of guys that are just getting into hunting are or gals are starting off in their late or early late 20s. They might have a condo only, they might have an apartment, who knows. A lot of people want to get into hunting, they don't have the space for it. So it's not just that it's lightweight and compact in the woods, but it's lightweight and compact when you're not hunting as well. A lot of people are trying to downsize all the equipment they own. Having a saddle system means you don't have to own 15 tree stands, 10 tree stands, five, even whatever it is. You have one system that is easy and compact to move around in the woods and in your normal everyday life. That's appealing to just about everybody.
Yeah.
Um,
Oh yeah. And you go
and
back to that point too of like the evolving nature of like jumping between leases or jumping between
Mhm.
different pieces of public, or now we see more with the advent of right, whatever, cell cameras, right? Just more information present again is this big factor of people jumping from state to state between
Yeah.
deer seasons. So we see more of that, I think. I think that is this is your go bag. Like it's in your truck, it's ready to go. And then what you just said also in the woods, like my big thing for switching to saddle hunting, my big draw was I would thought I was as lightweight as possible with the Lone Wolf 14-pound hand climber, but I was still that turtle walking through the woods. I mean, like literally catching branches.
Mhm.
I remember my pull-up rope I always had it tied off the stand, always dragging 20 feet behind me. And like,
Oh,
catching
you were
it
that guy.
always caught, yeah, it always caught whatever pine branch or whatever and just making noise. And I was like suffering. But that the stealth factor there, but you know, let's be honest, right? Hanging a platform is way easier than hanging a big hang on.
Mhm.
You know, again,
Yeah.
there's the tree size, the tree nasty trees, right? It definitely uh, major benefits over climbing stands. You know, if you're coming from that world, which I know a lot of people that start saddle hunting do come from that
Mhm.
climbing stand world. But maybe Bobby, you could touch on like that stealth factor climbing the tree, but also hunting, which not a lot of people point out. It might be one of those, you know, hiding behind the tree, right? Those types of things with saddle hunting.
Yeah, I mean, the biggest thing that you said it like it's all streamlined. So everything's really compact and you can just really just sneak through anything you want to. I'm coming from, the swamps of Michigan is the best way to describe it. So if I'm tackling public land, you usually got to walk through some nasty stuff. And usually when I started out mobile hunting was with a tree stand and I was always catching on stuff. And it wasn't the end of the world, but I knew I was kicking deer. I could see them run 'em away from me. But now with, like, the way saddle hunting is set up and, like, how you said from the past, like, the original saddles were bulkier, the materials were bulkier, and now to today, everything packed up on your bag and wearing your saddle in, which I wear my saddle in, you don't really know any difference from the actual stature of your body to what you're carrying into the woods. So that's really
Mhm.
sweet. And then by the time you get to the tree, like, just as an example, I think I may have already talked about it in one of these podcasts, but the buck I shot last year here in Michigan at home on the family property, I was on a tree that was probably no bigger around. I don't even think it was as big around as a 1 liter bottle, but it was a pin oak. So having all that vegetation on that tree, and I could hide behind all that instead of being sitting out in front of it on this edge of this field, hiding behind that, I had so many deer. It was the most activity I've had on a hunt ever. And none of these deer spotted me. None of these deer looked at me. The only deer that I spooked off was right before the shot because I had it 3 feet underneath my tree and it heard me drawing my bow back. Like, if you, I'm not going to like try and oversell this, but being behind any type of obstacle to be able to get away with movement is going to make success greater, no matter what, the way you want to look at it.
And not to say that you can't do that with a tree stand. I mean, even when I was
Correct.
hunting with a climber, I was facing it. But let's just be honest, and this is the next big draw. In my opinion, it's actually a concern for I think a lot of new saddle hunters, which is why the trade shows are so great because they get
Mm,
their butts in it and they fully understand it from a comfort side of it. But when you're trying to face the tree in a you're standing 90% of the time. I mean, it's also one of the biggest things that I hated with the small climber was like I was always paranoid about knocking crap down and making noise, whether it was that water bottle or several times knocking camera gear, like my main camera off and whatever, or bow, heaven forbid, something like that. I was always tuck my shoulders and I would just like try to barely move when it came to turning around.
mhm,
In a
mhm.
saddle situation, if this is the first thing you're hearing or whatever, which I doubt it, but you are literally you're sitting in a seat but facing the tree. I mean, you're imagine if you cut the rope, you know, you're flying back. You're landing on the ground 20 feet below you. You are facing the tree. You and the I think the next point that we need to bring besides the stealth factor, which I think you are kind of starting to point into, but you know, there's several instances where you are able to work around a platform and keep that tree between you and the deer. You have way more you don't have that ability as much with the tree stand, unless you have a big tree stand, to keep that tree between you and that deer. And I
Mhm.
think that that's especially when you get, like, in your situation, where you have a ton of deer, you can you can make your silhouette, um, I'm we're marketing guys. We probably do I mean, look at your hat there, Bobby. I mean, you've got that's the standard image people see when they
Oh,
think
yeah,
about
yeah.
saddle it's actually on my shirt too. You know, you see this image of a guy leaning out and his silhouette, uh, arguably away from the tree, but he is at an angle that does look like a branch. We will say that, but 90% of the time, you're not doing that.
No.
You are knees into the tree. You're hugging the tree. You could stand on your platform. You're keeping that silhouette to a minimum, but you're also facing the direction you're anticipating deer movement.
Yeah. Most of the time, if you were going to take this image or the one on your shirt, my shots with my bow would be in line with that tree, like alongside of that tree.
Yeah.
Right.
But that doesn't make a good marketing image.
No, you can barely
have
see the
killed
image.
The past 4 deer in a very similar position to what's on that hat.
You have
happen to
really
go behind me. But that's another key feature of the saddle that no one really keys in on too much is that, on a tree stand, if they go behind you, well, there's a tree there. If they go behind me in a tree saddle, I just spin and turn just like what's on your shirt and hat there and make that shot. So I'm not out of luck if that situation happens. The buck I shot last year on opening day, he was 15 yards directly behind me, and I just went my equipment and made the shot, and that was it. So it makes it convenient, but the thing about hiding it behind a tree or getting into those nasty busier trees, specifically here in Pennsylvania and in Michigan, the deer, there's so much hunting pressure that they're used to looking up. They're looking for tree stands. They're looking for people in trees. Minnesota, Wisconsin, all other states like that, it's similar, right? So when I was in a tree stand, climber specifically, I would have to be at least 24 feet in the air, at least, if I didn't want to stand out. Most of the time in a saddle here in PA, I'm not a small guy. I can be 14 or 15 feet and be just as effective hunting, so that's not only safer because I'm not as high, but it's faster set up because I'm not climbing as high. I'm not getting as sweated up, everything like that. And then having the gear in front of me, that's a big thing because I'm
instead of reaching back to grab
I'm not an expert in deer vision, but from in my experience, inline motion, direct line motion to a deer looking at you is much, much, much harder for them to see than swinging motions. So if I can reach my hand straight out, grab a bow and pull it straight back, or straight to my pack on my lower right hand side and grab a call, whatever it is, instead of swinging, turning around, digging for something behind me on my seat, whatever it is, that's better. And then I don't have a bow dangling right in front of my head off a gear hanger that may or may not get in the way if I stand up to make a shot and I got to move that out of the way while I'm trying to shoot. So
let's expand upon that. I mean, that while the saddle is giving you more maneuverability, and people say, "Oh, you're just moving a whole lot." Well, yeah. I mean, if you're a guy like me that has ADD, like, sure, you're going to be moving all over the place. But really is you've get your system down where you have your tools in front of you, and you can make way, in my opinion, way less movements unless you're just sitting there standing on your tree stand the whole time.
I think it's funny when people bring up this argument of you're always fidgeting in your saddle and stuff like that, because most of the time.
It goes back to the marketing, though.
Probably. Sure, but it's like anecdotal. It's like anecdotal evidence that I have in my head, right? Okay, but most of the time I can see when the deer are coming or hear when they're coming. Most of the time I'm just fidgeting around just for fun of it, and then most of the time I'm talking to the camera or you, not much quieter than I am right now, and people are going to freak out at me saying this, but. Sometimes we get a little too extreme with whitetails, thinking that they're going to spot you from 150 yards away if you freaking itch your nose. Like,
hey, but in Michigan or PA, by the time late season turns around, I'm sure a doe can spot you by 200 yards.
So late season's
I know, I've seen it.
That's a different story.
But
I've been caught a lot. I mean, not caught, but I've had deer walk by me as I'm 2 sticks up. Like one of the doe I shot last year. One of the doe I shot last year. I was 2 sticks up in a tree, and her and 4 other doe come walking by. I might have been 8 or 9 feet in the air on my lineman's rope. I just happened to pull my bow up and shot one of them because I was like, what's the point of climbing any higher now? They walked right by me. I was there for a doe that day anyways. And it happens more often than I would expect because, we get in our heads about, like, we have to be perfect. If I make any sound, they're going to see me. And then a whole doe group walks by you when you're 8 feet in the air as you're still climbing. Like, you're making all these movements. They're used to moving in the woods. They're used to all these things. You just have to think about how you do it. Certain sounds, Velcro, metallic, whatever it is, like things that are super loud, are different. But even in that case, it's not so bad. Like, I do a lot of suburban hunting, and these deer don't necessarily care about certain things that deer in big woods do. But that's also swapped. Like, I have to, if I'm hunting suburbia, I have to know the bus schedule literally for school drop off, because they won't move until that's gone. Like, it depends on the area, it depends on the property. but it's just all versatility. But the one thing I like to think about as far as like when we were talking about the gear in front of you on a tree, like I like to think about it like with saddle hunting, I was able to make my gear set up on a tree just like my workbench at home, like exactly how I want it, right? But when I had it on a climber, yeah, I can work on it, but it just wasn't as good. It's like once you upgrade from having like a folding table as your tool bench to like an actual tool bench where you have all your equipment right in front of you, nice on a pegboard. Like it's just there's a level at which you change it and you can customize it where it's right there in front of you and easy to use and it's consistent every time. Um, so I just ended up preferring that. And one of the main things for this that I didn't go back to, but you had mentioned something that I wanted to call back on, which was access. So more people want to get into saddle hunting because they're having trouble with access, whether that's getting kicked off private permission or there's a new lease on the property, whatever it is. One of the things that has made my life easier for asking for permission was none of my equipment stays in their property at any time.
Mm-hmm.
So when I go to somebody, I think I saddle hunt. You're not going to if somebody has 10 acres, let's say, and I want to hunt it. If they want to go on a walk with their wife or their kids through the trails in their woods, they're not going to have to look at a bunch of ladder stands or anything on the tree whatsoever. If I'm not there, nothing is there. And when I'm walking in and out, they're not seeing this guy with a bunch of devices dangling off and looking like a crazy person going there to kill some deer.
And
So
it doesn't have to be a direct switch like that. It is another
no, but
tool.
my point is like it
Yeah.
makes it easier for me to get access when access has been getting harder to get because people don't have to look at the reality of hunting. They don't have to look at this hunk of metal in their woods. They want to look at their woods and see something beautiful. They just maybe don't want deer eating their flowers or their vegetable gardens or whatever it is, but they don't happen to hunt. So it's the best of both worlds. They still get their beautiful property. I get to hunt it, and everyone's happy. And it's made it easier for me. I'm not saying it's going to work every time.
Right.
It doesn't have to be a wholesale change like that, but it's allowed me to have that conversation with landowners and get access to places that I would not have gotten access to before.
And I think Robert would probably be opposite of this, but like I kind of just because of the family farm dynamic and that kind of thing with hanging tree stands and different things like that. Once I specifically joined Trophyline and started saddle hunting, I sold my climbers. I sold my hang-ons. I don't and I'm entering in a different place in my life. My kids are gonna be starting to become old enough to hunt with me now. Maybe not elevated, but I will start doing more probably private focus and established stuff. But I'm gonna be honest, like for 3 years, besides maybe one or two trees, I haven't trimmed shooting lanes. I haven't hung those stands. I haven't done all that pre-work. It's actually given me more time to scout or honestly just spend time at home working or whatever.
Yeah.
And it actually is lowering my and I think this is important, especially for the guys with like leases. You can walk around and just say, yep, 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 yep. You don't have to do all that work. You don't have to honestly, you can get a lot done in that one scouting trip besides scouting the trip, then putting the stands up, right? Maybe then trimming. Like if you have your go bag, just swipe through the property, go, yep, 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 yep. Maybe you make note of having to do some trimming and stuff like that, of course. But I think you're going to be able to give yourself a lot more options when it comes to that.
I mean, to me, the way I started once I started getting into saddle hunting was like I could pick the tree you want to be in without trimming anything. So like if that tree over there had a whole bunch of limbs on it that I didn't want to trim off, then I'll just go to the one 5 feet away type. Really, it changed my whole ideology on private land hunting because I mean that's kind of why I started picking it up was primarily for private land because dad would have these specific spots set. We'd have fire lanes cut through for not just bow season, but to hunt out of them later into gun season. And it's like, okay, this is a nice spot, but I need to be 40 yards closer to where I really want to be. And I didn't want to make dad mad. So what do? I go out there and just climb up the tree on my own, don't trim nothing, shoot a buck out of it. And dad was like, what? Like it kind of just sometimes it kind of goes back to what I was just saying about giving sometimes deer a little more credit than we deserve. Sometimes we put too much stress on ourselves in certain hunting situations where we should just get out there and hunt. We should be up in that tree. We should be there that day type kind of thing.
Yeah. Which this obviously, arguably, this system could give you the option to go hunting more.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, nothing's easier than climbing into a stand, but I think that for me, one of the benefits that goes unseen until after you get experience is I guess the mindset that opens up around it, the opportunities that start. You stop. For me, it was like climbing stands. Like, oh my gosh, I got to get to the top of this hill and find a tree. I'm about to die. My sweat level is getting extreme, and now it's more like, all right, I'm gonna be very particular. I'm even gonna surpass that hill and go to the next one if I need to. If I don't see the acorns and the scrape or whatever, the sign. One thing that we every single one of us has touched on too, actually. Another the benefits to get out of the way to talk about now, and then we can kind of jump into the gear side of it would be, kind of going back to the movement, would be the comfort level. For
Mm,
me, jumping into the saddle, and Nick, you can definitely expand upon this, just with adjustability and things like that. But for me, when I jumped into it, like I'm a guy, I don't have a butt. I have a bony butt. I mean, there is no tissue. It's just bone to metal, and it hurts.
sorry,
And
Jessica.
yeah, sorry, Jessica. But, it's like, I'll try to work on it. But no, it's one of those things where it's like it was way more comfortable for me, but it was also the fact that, that extra safety factor made me able to move or be more comfortable. But sitting against a tree, I'm a guy that, if you're a saddle hunter, you either lean, stand, or you kneel, right? Or a hybrid between that. And what's nice is that I love explaining this at shows where it's allowing you to shift your weight to different portions of the body with very little movement. Like, let's be honest, like if you just bend your knees, you're now kneeling instead of standing, and that weight distribution is way different. Um, so I think that there's a comfort. You can't 90% of the time, you're gonna know someone in your inner circle with a saddle already, so you can try it, or you can find a dealer or a show near you to try it. Do yourself a favor and try it if you are doubting the comfort, but the comfort is I think it's a non-issue if not a benefit.
Yeah. I mean, so the cool thing about it is actually customizable comfort, right? So that's the main thing for me. In a tree stand, your choice is how thick is your padding? Does it have a back on it? Is it the mesh style seat? Things like that. That's about all your choices. Maybe you can choose how high the seat is. If you're a taller person versus a shorter person. In a
You also
saddle,
you have stand and sit.
yeah,
That's also your
yeah.
options.
But in a saddle, you have so many different rope systems. So your rope bridge dictates how tight it is on your waist, but also how far you lean off the tree. Your tree tether height dictates where the pressure points are on your thighs to your low back. You can have it lower, so all that pressure is on your lower back. If you don't want any pressure on your thighs, you can have it super high, so you're sitting in it just like you feel like you're sitting in a swing on a play set. It's all customizable, and you can change that throughout the hunt. So for any reason, you're, let's say it's an all day rut hunt. You spent 4 hours, and under your thighs is really starting to hurt. You can lower your tree tether and have that pressure be more on your lower back and your upper hip area, and that goes away. If that happens to you in a tree stand, your only option is to stand up for a little bit until it feels a little bit better, and then sit back down. So there's so much different you can do. Like you said, you can sit or kneel against a tree. You can straddle the tree. You can sit with your hip against it. There's different ways to change your body positioning with little movement that gets you to be comfortable longer in an elevated position. It's nothing like some of the older style climbers that are basically a reclining chair up in the tree. So that's hard to compete against, really. But um, it can be just as comfortable if you take the time and effort to put it in there. Not a ton of time, maybe 20 minutes, maybe half hour. We sell a back band. You could put a back band on that goes up under your armpits, and you lean back into that. Couple that
Yep.
with sitting in against the tree. Well, now
Yeah,
you literally are in a recliner
yeah.
that's safe.
With
if I-
knee pads,
yeah,
or my personal favorite, a lot of our packs have hip belts. You can
yeah,
literally put that on and buckle it around the tree, and that's a little bit of padding, just enough, right, to be comfortable with your knee. So we always say break the recliner out. We've had numerous requests to make koozie holsters on the back band, for
Well, we
popcorn, beer,
well
whatever.
we do sell some. We still have some vintage items. We do have a thermos pouch, a couple of them left in stock as we're talking right now. I know from experience that they will keep your regular 12-ounce coffee very warm, and they fit exactly two
Right there,
breakfast burritos in the
right
other
on
one.
the recliner.
So they're neoprene as well.
Love
So
it.
if I'm going for an all-day rut hunt, I'll take one of them's full of coffee. One of them has two pre-wrapped breakfast burritos just hanging out waiting for me. So you can put those on there, but the customizable level of comfort, that's the important thing. So um, it's not always, you know, is it's that much more comfortable than a tree stand. It's customizable. Nobody's body's the same. You and I have the same gear, right? We're using
Yep.
the same equipment. You like to use the plateau pack, so do I. You like to use the Venatic, so do I. But our systems are not the same. If I were to hold them side by side, people, you know, they wouldn't look identical. You go, oh, that's Weston's because he always likes something here. That's Nick's because he always likes something here. That's the cool part about it.
Yeah,
Is everything is
absolutely.
customizable, even down to it. The only thing you can really do on certain other products is tape it here and there somewhere, have a different height seat, and there's nothing wrong with that. If that's your preference, fine, that's great. But if you're looking for something where you can really hone in on your comfort, this saddle hunting lets you do it. It's a lot like shoes, right? Some people like different shoes or boot brands. Um, some people could just buy it off the shelf and they're totally fine. Some people need specialized equipment or specialized arches, whatever it is, to find that comfort all day. And that's kind of what saddle hunting caters to. It allows you to make those very small, minor changes that let the hunt be more enjoyable for you.
100%. I feel like now we have to jump into the last benefit, and then we can start going into gear, which arguably next two episodes in this podcast will be definitely more gear oriented and actual application. Stories, testimonies, whatever. But the last one I think we have not covered, but we have talked a little bit about is shooting out of a saddle.
Mhm.
Now we have a series called Tech Tips. Nick, you're mainly in this, but we also have some ambassadors, and then a lot of Bobby lately as well. Shooting out of a saddle and classifying it in three ways, right? Bow, crossbow, and gun out of the saddle, because there's a lot of benefits, arguably, to all of those. Um, Before we kind of jump into it, there is that resource Tech Tips online. um, we do have ambassadors, Just Hunt Club doing rifle and gun out of the saddle, kind of showing you how to use that. Our own customer service agent Jeff, talking about the crossbow, and then world champion archer Levi Morgan showing how to shoot a bow. So if you're in doubt about shooting, especially a bow out of a saddle, we have a video of Levi Morgan talking about how he's not, he's not concerned about it and why he actually likes it. Um, but I think we should do justice and give a really quick, Bobby. Maybe you can give like a really quick, how to shoot out of a saddle and the benefits of it.
Well, you get in the tree, you pull your bow back, and you kill something.
It's
Simple.
that
I mean,
easy.
I know quite a few guys, and I'm not recommending this, but I know quite a few guys that the first time they ever saddle hunted was the first time they shot out of a saddle and killed something. It's just not the best way to do it. I will say, because we're kind of skipping over one thing here, this is probably one of those cons to saddle hunting, is getting familiar with your equipment and putting some time in your yard.
Mhm.
You're used to shooting from the ground standing, or maybe you've been in a tree stand for a really long time. It's a different feeling, but it doesn't change the aspect of shooting itself. The bridge isn't going to get in your way. The majority of the time, your back band will never get in your way. It's just getting used to actually shooting with a proper form and bending at your hips. And that's kind of, probably, if I remember right, that's what Levi talks about, is because you have 3 points of contact. Generally, you could have up to 4 points of contact with a saddle, where you can have your knee into the tree, both feet on the platform, and then your rope holding your saddle.
yep.
And that's going to kind of make it so that you're keeping your shoulders in line and bending at your hips. And some people are so used to just dropping their arm from a tree stand instead of shooting with a better form, more accurate form, that it's something they've got to get used to in their yard. So yeah, it's a con, but it's not really a con. It's actually making you a better shooter in the end.
Yeah.
If you look at it
Yeah,
that way.
and definitely the need or the requirement really to practice with your gear. I would say,
Mhm.
in theory, is a con. My only con about shooting from the saddle is that I have to hook up to the tree every single time. So go take a couple shots, climb down,
Oh
hit the
yeah,
Yeah,
arrows.
sure.
So
That's what that's
that's
what
a
the
bit of a
kids are for.
con, but that's that the thing is though, out of that, it's easier for me to create situations that mimic real life for the shooting
yeah,
thing. So a pro
Yeah,
is
yeah.
I find one tree, whether that's on public or in a yard, and I move a 3D target 360 degrees around that tree. And it
Mhm.
allows you to understand how your body is going to want to shoot at that angle if that situation arose in the woods. I can't always do that. Um, I mean, just standing on the ground, I can move the target around, but it's just me spinning, standing
And
around. Like, what's
The
the
big,
point?
the
I
biggest
think
thing.
it's
Go ahead, Weston.
I was gonna say, like, the biggest thing for me is, like, you don't have to, I've written a couple articles on this, and we have, like, a tree saddle magazine, and obviously we're at shows all the time. It's like, when you let someone sit there and you're like, "Hey," I always like to act as a deer and, like, walk around the tree so they can target and whatever imaginary bow, or if we have an actual bow so they can kinda get the gist of you know, how to watch their limbs and ropes and stuff like that, but they instinctually pick it up immediately.
Yeah,
Like, it's not hard, and to be honest, if you have a big enough platform, it's a tree stand anyways.
yeah.
You're not doing anything different. However, I mean, there is that weak side shot, and depending on, like, I like to hung out of a wingman, and that's a very small platform, so I'm going to have to do certain things a certain way, and it depending on your gear choices, which we're gonna start getting into, you know, that that can that can require that extra practice. I mean, I always suggest it, but that more so, I think, actually shifts you into needing to do some stuff like that.
I mean,
So,
the
that
biggest
being said,
thing with archery equipment is making when you're in a saddle, you tend to like your body's like on a lean. So your body, when you draw your bow, you can cant your bow. So if you've got a level on your sight, pay attention to your level. That's the biggest thing. That's the only thing that'll ever need really paying attention to when you get your draw.
yeah,
But as far as with a gun, nothing's going to change. You're going to have a tree in front of you that you can use to brace up or use your bridge. When you're turning around, you'll be able to get your back into the tree and all that kind of stuff. And then for a crossbow, if it's a standard crossbow with horizontal limbs, you just got to make sure you got clearance around a tree. If it's a vertical crossbow of some sort, you don't have anything to worry about. Maybe your bridge, but I wouldn't think so. I've never used one, so I don't
Yeah,
know.
yeah,
neither have
yeah,
I. So it's
yeah.
yeah,
And going back to practice, practice, and this is going to get us into our gear talk. Like, as you're actually before you pick up the gear, practice with somebody else or at a dealer or show, whatever, kind of get a generalization of what you like with your hunting style, kind of another plug for our system builder. You can go through those questions and figure out maybe what gear we're starting to lean you towards. And we always have good customer service lines you can pick up and call, and we'll help you decide on that gear as well. Um, Tons of resources online, but practice. And I think that, just from my example, the first time I saddle hunted, I went like 2 miles deep on public land, and I was still. I mean, it took me 30 minutes to set up, and I was still messing with my saddle when my one of my target bucks was behind me, and I completely missed out on the opportunity. I'm
Yeah.
gonna be the first to admit it, and it was. But I made poor gear choices, and I think that's what we need to get into. Like, what at a basic necessity before we start getting into upgrades and building out your system, from a simple standpoint, what does someone need to pick up to start hunting? And I will say, I chose not to get a platform. I was hunting off the
Mm.
top of sticks, and I know so many people, they're trying to get into saddle hunting, and arguably, we're going to talk about cost. We're going to talk about ways, you can, maybe make it less damaging to your wallet. Besides just honestly picking up the gear and selling all your tree stands or climbing stands like I did and just making the money up.
I mean,
But I was hunting off the top of a stick because I didn't want to pick up a platform.
I mean, that's you can start that way. It
Yeah,
sucks, but you can start that way.
your feet will hurt.
Your feet will hurt, and you're going to kind of limit yourself on some opportunity.
Weak
And
side shot is going to be extremely hard. Turning around on that. If I'm a right hand shooter, weak side shots that's the opposite side. So being able to turn around is really hard on that. You can still
Mhm.
go over
yeah.
and make that shot happen, but I think we have to talk about at a basic necessity, if someone is going to start saddle hunting, where should they start? What gear should they pick up first?
So I think it's pretty obvious you need to saddle first, right? So, and if you're getting started and you don't have either knowledge of safety ropes or any safety ropes from a previous setup for a mobile system, get a full saddle kit. It's just, we have a couple different varieties on our website. There's a bunch of brands with a bunch of different varieties of saddle kits. It's the basic necessity is the saddle and the safety ropes. Pouches are helpful to keep those safety ropes on your saddle, as I dictated earlier in the podcast. Like, it's crucial to have those with you if something happens, and you want them on you just for speed of getting in the tree, anyways. So pouches, safety ropes, saddle. That's the start. Have to start there. Otherwise, you're not saddle hunting. The only other thing you absolutely need is a way to get up the tree.
Mm-hmm.
That's it. So climbing sticks. There's a bunch of different options. There's screw-in steps if it's legal in your state. There's a whole bunch of it, but a way to get up the tree is the only other necessity that you absolutely need.
Mhm.
As you already said, though, there's drawbacks to that. But let's say you're on a super tight budget and you can only get two of those things: sticks and a saddle kit. Great. What you're going to have to plan for is, like Robert said, your feet are going to hurt. So maybe find the stiffest sole boots you could possibly find and afford. Use those.
Yeah.
That's how you can start.
What are you making that decision for? Are you trying to make that decision from a weight standpoint, or are you trying to make a decision from a cost standpoint?
I'm saying
right?
I'm actually making a decision for a cost.
Right.
If you're
Cost,
getting
right.
started and you have a limitation on what you can buy, what you absolutely need is the saddle kit and a way to get up the tree. That is
and I would
necessities.
And I would actually take a step back from that and say, if you want to try it and maybe you're not having to get that way up the tree, like you have those, cheap sportsman guide, right? Whatever, $90, 20 foot of you know what I'm saying? The ladder, preset sticks, or honestly, pre-established hang-ons. If you're hunting with people, especially, or in Robert's case, like he's a camera guy. So really, I mean, better buy if you do have a lot of pre-established stuff and you don't want to hang from that hang on and you want to weigh the differences between a hang on and a saddle, just get the platform and the saddle kit, right, to start. So that would be another, if depending on your situation, I think that would be the basic.
Yeah, if you're starting at ground zero, you get the kit and the climbing system. If you're starting with already owning some sort of climbing systems or stands themselves, in theory, your ladder stand, that seat could be a platform. As long as you climb up safely, attached as you're climbing up that ladder stand prior to putting on your tree tether, you could use that as a system, and you can use the pre-existing set you already have in a completely different way.
And that platform also could help you practice, like in your yard before the season too. I mean, you could do it off the top of sticks or off the ground or whatever it happens to be. But I think that there's, from a basic necessity standpoint, it's that saddle kit, it's the sticks, and then platform would be in that key category as well.
Yeah,
I think
it's right. It's right in there. I mean, it's again, if I'm just talking basic necessity, you absolutely don't need it. But I would say you might get 2 hunts in and be like, I'm gonna buy a platform, because it's just it doesn't make it enjoyable, and it doesn't allow you to focus on the hunt. You're focusing on, hey, my feet hurt. Hey, I can't get around here. This kind of sucks. That's what you're focusing on. You're focusing on the hunt. So in order to just cleanly get started and truly use saddle hunting to its highest potential, you need some sort of platform.
And to clarify a little bit there too, like when we're saying saddle kit, we're not saying a saddle bundle like you'll see on a lot of websites. A saddle kit basically is just going to be your saddle and your climbing ropes you need, and generally has a pouch in it as well. So like we're not trying to throw something big number, like Nick and I were saying. Like if you're looking to get into this, college kid or younger, and you don't have much money, saddle, kit with the ropes, and then a climbing method. And then like if you're going to go the cheapest route you could for platform wise, a lot of people like a ring of steps. So buying yourselves 3 or 4, if you can use them where you're hunting, 3 or 4 of those steps you screw into a tree. That's a way to get started. That's the first platform I ever used, and quickly switched over to the Mission because I could. But I mean, at least I got out there using it, So
that's the most important part. We want people out there hunting out of these systems and seeing the versatility and also being able to hunt safely. Obviously, we want people to come to our store and look at check out the products
Sure.
and hopefully buy into them and really appreciate what we've done. But at a bare minimum, you could do something just like that.
Yeah.
But the
Yeah.
platform just allows you to focus on the hunt more than the gear. That
Mhm.
makes sense.
Mhm.
Like
Mhm.
once you're
Yeah.
set, you can focus on the hunt and not focus on, did I put this screw in step right here in the right position? Should I move that step 3 inches this way or whatever it is? Like you can, if you play it too short, sometimes it can distract you.
Mhm.
Um, so just keep that in mind when you're doing these things.
Yep.
100%. And I think, and again, episodes 2 and 3 are going to get really into the weeds on gear and setups and systems and upgrades and things like that. But those saddle kits are coming with Prusik knots, and the carabiners that you need.
Yeah.
But they're not coming with some of the upgrades like mechanical ascenders and some things that can make life and hunting and especially climbing way more enjoyable, faster, slicker, in my opinion. That old build out adage of what is it? Slow is smooth, smooth is fast. Like
Mhm.
that is very true when it comes to saddle. And I think when we start talking about these upgrades, and one of the gear pieces that we didn't talk about, pack, right? Like the pack and packing this system um in a way that gives it those advantages of not looking like a turtle walking through the woods with that big old hang on or the big old
Mhm.
climber stand, making sure that system is run super smooth. And then, we also had this note of how to start, right? Okay, get this system, or get the basic necessities, and hopefully you have a pack if you're not buying one that will work. And maybe you'll quickly find out that you want to get one that is actually made for saddle hunting that allows you to kind of carry this gear. But get out there, and I know Nick, you're a big proponent of this. Like, get out there and climb late at night, and then climb in the dark.
Yeah. So it's not always the dark, but you know, everyone talks about practicing in your yard, but most of the time in the when you're actually to be climbing up or down, it's going to be at least gray light at the
Mhm.
best.
Mhm.
Maybe you only go for a morning hunt, you're climbing down midday, fine, whatever. But your first climb of the day, then when you are not warmed up or maybe still tired, haven't finished your coffee, that's in the dark. If you've done
Yeah.
all day rut hunt and it's getting dark, you've been out in that tree for 10 hours, you're tired. That's in the
Yep.
dark.
Yep.
So you need to be able to climb and practice with your headlamp on, see how the gear looks, and
Coming
go
down
slow. Coming
and coming,
down.
yeah, yeah, coming down,
So
going smooth, going, yes, slow.
so it's very crucial to practice at all times of the day. So I obviously start in daylight, get comfortable in daylight, move to gray light, dawn, dusk, and then maybe try before you go out at least once or twice. Do it in dark where you would require a headlamp. You don't have to go high. You could go 2 sticks in the air. You could go 1 stick in a platform. You just need to understand what it's going to look like and feel like in darkness as you do it, because that's going to be the optimal time for you to either set up or come down.
No
No,
different than a hang on, no different than a
no.
climber. Like, we're gonna
Right.
suggest the same, but like I said, I literally went into this on public and, like, practice at the ground instead of leaning back in the saddle when you're 20 feet up and saying, "Jesus, take the wheel." Like, let's
Yeah.
be honest, like, you don't wanna have that feeling and you can't see the ground beneath you in the dark.
Mhm. It's
That
just not worth it. And
yeah.
the one difference, for hang-ons is that you're doing these presets. So some people take it for granted. They've set it up in the daylight, and all they're doing is climbing and stepping in, right?
Yeah. Not taking everything down with them.
Not taking everything down with them. So you're doing all this different setup where you're having to manipulate attachment methods, stuff dangling off you. You have to practice that. Now, if you do a preset, you can still do presets with saddles. There's nothing against that. If you do it, fine. But I'd still would rather you practice at some point in time in low light or no light situations, because you will experience them and you need to know how to handle them. It's a lot like, you know, when you buy headlamp equipment or whatever it is, you're not going to never turn, hopefully turn on before you go in the woods and actually understand how to use it. You need to know how to do these things in the dark, just like you need to know how to hike to your location in the dark, read terrain, um, prior to going in, and understand what it looks like in the dark with just your headlamp. You have to do these things to keep yourself safe. So absolutely do that. So thank you for pointing that out, because that is crucial.
I think we did a pretty good job of covering what, why, right? Benefits, cons,
Mhm.
right? Um, Obviously, where to start with gear. And I mean, is there anything else that we missed that you guys would say to the guy that is literally right on the fence, likely leaning to getting some saddle hunting gear right before the season? Um, I guess the last thing I would say is don't hesitate and get it now. Um, One of the things that we do that not a lot of other brands do, if not, I don't know if any of them do, you can pick this stuff up. You can go to our website right now, use the system builder, or just get one of these kits that has the basic necessities of saddle kit, platforms, or just the sticks in the saddle, um, or a complete saddle hunting kit with pack, saddle kit, platform, and sticks. You have 30 days to try that and use it and practice with it. And if it's not for you or you want to try a different, set of platforms or whatever, you can. We have a risk-free 30-day guarantee that you can actually return this stuff if it's not for you. So
Mhm.
if you don't have those options of friends or whatever, those friends have maybe systems that you're already thinking is not going to work for you, or the dealer or the show or whatever is limited and what you can access gear wise, you can do this with us. You can
Mhm.
try it for 30 days.
Yeah, I would say definitely go through their system builder process prior to doing that, so it points you in the right direction for how you think you're going to hunt on that initial purchase. But if there's something you buy, you think, oh, maybe I'd want more space and maybe a bigger platform, or I don't really take that much stuff in with me, so I want a smaller backpack, or whatever it is, then give us a call. We can make those adjustments and work through with you. You know that
Hmm.
we believe in our gear and we want our customers to be completely satisfied. So that's important to us. Um, so that's it allows you to try these things and get your foot, in the door, so to speak. But I'd say one major benefit that we didn't really cover was I don't have to set up tree stands in July anymore, and that's super unenjoyable. And take them down in February when it's 0 degrees or whatever it is, because I don't want them sitting out all year.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
don't have to do that work, which is for me. I always worried about boogering up spots, but it just is unfun. And like you said, I can spend that time scouting and just hiking around and not 15 feet in a tree. Oh, I found a wasp nest. Now I have a bunch of bites or whatever it is, like, or covered in poison ivy or ticks or whatever it is. Like, it pulls me out of the woods in those times where I know I need to go in there and do the suck. It's just no fun. But now I don't have to do that stuff. I can just hike
It's
around and go. I could point at the tree and go, okay, when it's less miserable, I'm going to climb that one instead of having to do it right there in July. So that's a
it's
main
all
benefit for me.
it's all that mindset switch. I mean, that was the biggest thing, it's like when you start getting into gear or you start getting into, maybe you're really maybe this is the season that you're gonna listen to podcasts. You're gonna dive into more tactics and start learning and start trying to chase mature bucks or just more opportunities in different states or whatever it happens to be. I think that's maybe not just specifics of saddle hunting, but the mobile hunting mindset of just chasing these opportunities and not being restricted because of gear in a way,
Mhm.
with that older mindset. I think that is gonna be crucial. I think that's why you probably landed on this podcast, to be honest with you.
I think for me, like I know saddle hunting is not meant for everybody, but for me, the mental relief that I felt started saddle hunting was comparable to ground hunting. Like, I mean, like just ground and pound. Like, you don't
Mm,
have to think about anything other than being in the right spot. But what the benefit is over saddle hunting compared to the ground hunting is yes, you're up in the tree. You can have more cover. Your scent's going to blow possibly over top of deer. It's got those types of benefits to it. Now, with that said, there's some guys out there that and some gals that probably shouldn't even be in a tree hunting just because of your nature.
Mhm.
But
mm.
it's a good thing to try out if you're looking to at least have like a new tool in the toolkit, just like we
Yeah.
started with. I
And
mean,
that especially goes tenfold for out of state hunts, right? I mean, how
yes,
many times, like, if you plan an out of state hunt, you're like, is my climber going to work here? Do I have the right mobile lock on? Whatever it
yeah,
is, I don't have to care about that anymore. I simply take the exact same saddle setup that I have used everywhere else and I
mhm,
go onto the property. That's it. I just
yeah.
find the sign and I find a tree that's alive and bigger than 4 inches in diameter. I can hunt. So
Yeah.
that's the huge thing for me. It's like there's no hesitation of like, will this property actually work? Will this piece of public actually work for my gear?
Mhm.
I don't want to tailor the property to my gear. I want my gear to be able to go to whatever damn property I want to take it on.
Well, let's be
And
honest. If you're ground hunting with a bow, like you're very dialed in
Oh, I mean,
to
it's yeah. I
whatever
mean, like
opportunity. I mean, you're
the comparison I made there
no,
was
but
more like
that's
it's like you're just going to hunt. Like you don't have
yeah,
to think about presets, any of this type of thing. It's like
Yep.
yeah,
I'm gonna go where I need to go. But yeah,
exactly.
ground hunting definitely is a whole
And
adrenaline difference.
and again, what we're gonna jump into number 2 and number 3 on this series is going to be I got more gear talks and stuff, but like let's be honest, like some of this gear you're making significant weight adjustments, but you're not like making insane weight adjustments to your gear
Mhm.
like the technology is now giving us. I mean,
Mhm.
we're on the cusp of our hyperlight launch. That system is 6.5 pounds, and that's your base weight, right? Again, before pack, but you're wearing the saddle, no different than your tree stand harness. So if you are coming from a climbing, you might be reducing your weight to a third, maybe to a quarter of your weight from your for your base system. These technologies, these new, and even for some of our competitors, the gear is getting into this realm where I'm not sure where else we can go with it because you get to a point where you're so lightweight you're unsafe. Let's be honest. So I mean, it's the gear is there. I mean, you are now significantly saving weight. So that is a massive benefit. And even in our systems, every single person on this phone, our systems are reducing likely very close to 50% with weight savings
And
with these
each
new
one of
hyperlight.
our systems is a little different too. I think that's one thing that we didn't touch on. It's like if you got to helter skelter stuff together to get yourself in the woods, go ahead and do it. If you got to make a platform,
Yep.
like I'm not saying to make a platform, but
You've been
a
there.
lot of us have come from
Yeah.
getting we want to hunt, we want to get there, do what you need to do to get there, you know?
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah. There's enough options on the market now where, obviously more competition is good for the industry. It's good, definitely great for hunters trying to get their hands on gear. There's way more options now than there was 5, 10 years ago when there's only a few brands. So,
Mhm.
making gear in garages or like you were, Bobby, Nick, yourself,
Mhm.
making gear isn't you don't have to do it as much. There's a lot of gear options on there. And that
Yeah,
competition has made it more digestible and sometimes friendlier to cost too, depending on the gear that you're looking at. So that
Absolutely.
is what we're going to jump in episode 2. The cost benefit analysis, right? Is it worth it? What's the cost? And building your system from the ground up, uh, whether you're experienced, beginner, amateur, wherever you are, right? What are some of these tips that can help? Anything last words? Episode 1 for the series.
love you.
That's it.
I think we did a great job covering it. And I'm excited to kind of get this info out there again for everybody. Um, one last thing, if you're thinking about getting this, do not hesitate. Please give yourself some time before season. Jump on it, practice. You'll be way more effective. If you buy it in season, please don't go out the same day it arrives at your door. Please try it in your yard. Please. Thank you.
Yeah. Try it in your yard. Well, that's it. Mobile Venatic podcast. We're here to try to get you to make the move, whether it's make the move to saddle hunting, mobile hunting mindset, or make the move if you're picking up on some latest intel, acorn drop, whatever. Make the move. Get yourself in that opportunity. That's it. If you guys have questions, always reach out to our customer service line, and we will see you on the next one.